Hey everyone, this is Shenandoah County Sheriff Timothy Carter, and today with me I have a special guest. We have longtime friend Sheriff Anthony Tony Roper from Clarke County, the Clarke County Sheriff's Office Sheriff. Sheriff Roper, let me see, you've been doing this for a long time. I think you've actually been in law enforcement probably a little bit longer than I have.
I began my career sheriff in 1978, so that has been a while ago. And I'm proud to say that I came into office as sheriff at the same year that you did, sir.
That's right. Yep, we've had some things we have in common. We both went to the National Academy, FBI's National Academy. We both went through the National Sheriff's Institute on Leadership out in Colorado. And both got elected at the same time, but Tony's older than I am, so I guess that says he's one up on me.
Appreciate you making people aware of that, sir.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, Sheriff, let's talk a little bit about. Let's just get into a little bit about some of this police reform legislation. I've had some other guests on, Sheriff from Frederick County and Senator Obenshain, and I just kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the local impacts of some of this legislation that we've been seeing, either through the previous session or the special session last year. There's been a lot that's come out that law enforcement is having to deal with as far as new laws, new policy changes, data collection, and all kinds of other things. I know here in Shenandoah County, we've actually look to, and so far the budget, of course, hasn't been approved yet, but we've asked our Board of Supervisors to fund a full-time accreditation manager and a full-time training officer and a full-time data manager for camera and information technology needs. So I was wondering if these needs or the things that we're dealing with here in Shenandoah County, is it similar to what you guys are dealing with there in Clarke County?
Sheriff, as usual, you're kind of cutting edge on all of the things that you're asking for and all of the things that you've already implemented there in Shenandoah County. Here in Clarke County, we're a very conservative bunch of folks up here, and I'm also the sheriff of a much smaller jurisdiction than you have there in Shenandoah County. I am very late to the body-worn camera position. I currently do not have body-worn cameras on deputy sheriffs of Clarke County. I am in the process of changing that. So this particular year, I've asked for funding for body-worn cameras. So I am not in a position yet to determine what I will need as far as accreditation manager and body and field camera IT management. But I assure you, as in most things I do at my office, there was a cost-benefit analysis of my figuring into the implementation of body-worn cameras. Mm-hmm. While I am certain that they can be useful in a lot of situations, I'm positive that they can. And honestly, our citizens are clamoring for that information anymore. But there is an unforeseen cost associated with this, Sheriff. Mm-hmm. And in managing resources, I just could not bring myself to go that route prior to this year. Keeping up with all of that data and watching all of those videos mm-hmm. Is a significant undertaking.
Right, and I tell you, Sheriff, you're exactly hit the nail on the head. I mean, I tell you, when we got into the body-worn camera world, we had an incident in Shenandoah County. We were in, actually more to be exact, we were in the town of Woodstock, and the town police were field testing body-worn cameras that night, and we had an officer-involved shooting. This has been several years ago. And it was very helpful to our Commonwealth's attorney and to the investigating agency. The Virginia State Police investigated that incident. It was very helpful, I think, for them to come to their conclusions, and it didn't take a long time, you know, when you didn't have that data or that visual imagery there that we had, for them to know that the deputy was justified and that it wasn't anything other than a justifiable incident on behalf of the deputy and what they were doing. But When we got into it, of course, then we could see, okay, these are a benefit to officer safety. They're a benefit to transparency for the Commonwealth and the judicial system to use in prosecutions. The issue that's hit us is the management of the data and the management of the actual equipment. Because, I think people don't understand you have both those things going on. Like, for example, we might have 30, 40, 50 cameras, and are they all operating properly? Are they all working? You got to have a person that's actually making sure of that. I mean, I know you buy them and you have maintenance contracts and all that, but you need to make sure that there's someone on staff that makes sure that the things are actually operating. And then the second piece of it is the actual data. Who's managing the data when you need that for court or, some subpoena or something like that? I mean, is the data available? Was the camera working that day? Did the deputy actually have it turned on? Because ours is discretionary and they don't just automatically come on. And that does take resources to handle both of those issues. And at this point, we've kind of muddled through, for lack of better words. We've had them and they've worked out fine, but we're getting more and more concerned about the data management, concerned about the actual equipment operability management, and so you're probably good by taking your time going through that.
Yeah, and we'll have some time once we've had them in the field for the year. Although our budget has not been approved, that's all we're asking for in this year's budget. So this time next year, I will have considered all of the things I need to properly make use of these things in the field. And I suspect there'll be some additional cost to them. In addition to that,
right.
Listen, there's no question they're very useful when we're using deadly force and all of those sorts of things. But I worry that we become a society so dependent on what that one little snippet of video says or seems to say that we lose track of all of the other things that are so necessary in an investigation. Suppose the equipment doesn't work. Suppose that the body is positioned in the wrong way. So we're committed to it. I've finally come around to being committed to it, but I'm under no illusions that this is the panacea, that this is going to solve everything.
Right. No,
it's just another tool in our toolbox.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sheriff. And a lot of people you don't know, you're also a graduate of Virginia's Forensic Science Academy, and you speak to the aspects of there is more to the actual crime scene than a 10-second, 20-second, 30-second piece of video that may be clear, may be audible, may be in an angle that can be seen properly, but there are other things with regard to the crime scene or the incident that have to be taken into consideration. So you make some good points there.
I think that's exactly right. They're not going to replace good old-fashioned nose to the grindstone police work. They can absolutely supplement that, but they're not going to replace good judgment and good use of the resources that we have otherwise. Right.
Sheriff, let's talk a little bit about accreditation. Are you guys, I think you guys are accredited, are you not? Clarke County Sheriff's Office?
We are, yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir, we are.
And it's my understanding, I think you might even have do you have a master assessor or someone that actually goes and assesses other agencies working for you?
Yes, sir, I do. I do have the chief deputy of this office, in fact, Travis Sumption, mm-hmm. who was our accreditation manager for a while. And then as he moved up in responsibility to the office, yes, sir, he spends a great deal of time on the accreditation process.
Right. Well, I know we're spending a lot of time, too, with it, Sheriff, and it's my understanding just by talking with our association and other people around the Commonwealth that I even remember receiving a letter this year from the federal government regarding federal funding, and they used our accreditation as the basis for continuing that federal funding. So I do think it's going to become more important. And with all the new policies and changes, the new laws, you got to have somebody keeping up with that.
I think that's exactly right. I agree with you. We received the same letter, so they were sort of using the accreditation has the certification otherwise that the federal government had. So it turned out to be very important at that time. But I will also say to you that even prior to that, we consider it best practices when we compare ourselves with how our office is operating in the general sphere of professionalism. And to have an outside entity come in every 3 or 4 years and take a look at not only what our policies are, but what we're actually doing in the field, I think it's just incredibly useful that we compare ourselves against what everybody else is doing, best practices.
Right.
And so that accreditation means a lot to us.
Right. Yeah, same here, Sheriff. And that's, again, one of those things I think with police reform and all of the new law changes that you can't put enough emphasis on. Let's move a little bit over to training. With regard to our training, we belong to a regional training academy, as does Clarke County. Now, our regional academy is south of Shenandoah County, and there was a time when Clarke and Shenandoah and the rest of this part of the region all belong to the same ones, but that's a historical perspective, and now we belong to two different academies. But anyway, a lot of people maybe they don't understand, but the standards and the criteria that we train to for each new recruit and throughout a deputy's career is all mandated by the Commonwealth of Virginia's Department of Criminal Justice Services. Do you see or do you think that there's going to be related or enhanced training with regard to this new legislation and police reform coming out of Richmond?
Oh, I think there absolutely will be. In fact, we've already seen some of them. And some of them are necessary. Let me suggest to you, however, that up here in this end of the Commonwealth, I know with you guys and the people at our academy, we were already doing significant numbers of the training that's now mandated by the Commonwealth of Virginia. We were already way out in front of that. Our use of force policy, I know there was a great deal of questions about how the folks in Minnesota handled the tragic death of Mr. Floyd. The case is going to trial right now. But we, for example, we entertain questions from our local press about do we teach neck holds? Do we all of those things? And we were so far ahead of all of that. I'm very proud of the Commonwealth and what our DCJS has done. I am very interested in some of the things further that we'll be trained on regarding mental health. Mental health in our ability to deal with those problems here in the Commonwealth is just a huge issue. In fact, you and I, of course, are members of the command board of our regional drug task force, and we are currently in a huge epidemic of opioid overdoses.
Right.
And if you believe, like I do, that drug abuse or alcoholism or all of these things can be attributed to a mental illness, I think the problem just becomes even more amplified. And we recognize that we've been pretty derelict, I would suggest, in how much resources we put toward the mental health issue that we have.
I'm with you, Tony, and I agree. And one of the things, though, that when I've talked to my state senator and I've talked to others in Richmond, I don't like this idea of taking money out of one pot and giving it to another pot. I mean, when I've been given the opportunity to serve on the Marcus Alert Work Group task force, statewide task force, and one of the things that I've tried to get across to that particular group is, if we both go to our governing bodies, the state, the locality, what have you, and we've identified that there's a need for additional services, we identify there's a need for additional funding, and approach it in that form, I think that's a lot better than going before a group or a body and trying to basically rob Peter to pay Paul. So I'm not for that. I don't think that's the right approach. I do think that those services need to be improved upon. I do think that there needs to be some additional and more enhanced training for law enforcement and our responses to those kinds of things. But I don't think that you want to move money from one aspect of public safety to another aspect of government services either. But I'm with you there.
I couldn't agree more. We can't be in competition, as it were, with the mental health side of the shop. They're both very necessary things.
Right.
But they're both very necessary things. So you can't just. It's not as easy as taking defunding the police or whatever they were calling it there for a while. That's too simple a solution. This is a complex thing, and we just got to put the resources into it.
Right. Well, Sheriff, those are the primary points that I wanted to bring up with you today. Unless you had anything else that you wanted to bring up in the discussion.
No, Sheriff. I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. My friend, I believe that you would agree with me that being a sheriff in the Commonwealth of Virginia is just about the best thing in the world.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
As we look around, at what our legislature is trying to do now, and I appreciate the politicians and I appreciate all of the hard work that they're doing. I would suggest that as the sheriffs of our individual jurisdictions who get elected every 4 years, we kind of know the pulse of our community. They look to us to deal with these things, and I'm very pleased to be in that position.
Well, Sheriff, I'm with you there 100%, and I wanted to thank you for spending a few minutes of your time today. Just so the people that are listening, Sheriff Roper and I, again, we go back a long time. And he's been very helpful to me in my career. His agency and my agency work on a number of initiatives together, whether it be the Drug Task Force or the Virginia Sheriff's Association Board or Virginia Sheriff's Institute group. And I know that Tony, you've been very helpful to me personally, and I know your organization has been helpful to Shenandoah County Sheriff's Office, and you serve the people well there. And they have a person that works very hard for them there in Clarke County, and I appreciate everything you've done.
Sheriff, it's indeed my pleasure, sir, and it's been a pleasure working with you.
All right. Well, hey, listen, everyone, thanks again for joining me today, and don't forget to follow me at Timothy C. Carter on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, along with the full podcast that can be found on my YouTube channel. And please hit the subscribe button if you want to get notifications, and also smash that like button. Thank you.